When Michael first arrived in the city, he wasn't looking for anything special. Just a place to live. The job offer had come suddenly. A small publishing company had hired him as an editor, and he needed to move quickly. Hotels were expensive, and most apartments were already taken. After 3 days of searching, he finally found something. A small apartment in an old brick building on Ashford Street. The rent was surprisingly cheap. Too cheap. Michael noticed that immediately. The landlord, a thin man in his 60s named Mr. Harper, stood in the hallway while Michael looked around the apartment. The place was simple. A small living room, a tiny kitchen, a narrow bedroom, and one window that faced a dark alley. Still, it was clean enough. "Why is it so cheap?" Michael asked. Mr. Harper shrugged. "It's an old building." Michael nodded slowly. Old buildings usually had problems: bad plumbing, thin walls, strange smells. But he could live with that. "What about the neighbors?" Michael asked. Mr. Harper hesitated for a moment. "They keep to themselves." Michael didn't think much about the answer. He signed the lease that same afternoon. That night, Michael moved in with only 2 suitcases and a laptop. The hallway outside the apartment felt strangely quiet. Not silent, just empty. Most buildings had sounds, televisions, footsteps, doors closing. But here, the corridor felt like no one else lived there. When he unlocked his door, the hinges creaked softly. He stepped inside. The apartment felt colder than before. Michael rubbed his arms. "Old building," he muttered. He unpacked a few things, made a simple dinner, and opened his laptop to check some emails. Outside, the city slowly grew quiet. By midnight, Michael was exhausted. He turned off the lights and lay down in bed. For a while, everything was peaceful. Then, sometime around 2:13 a.m., he woke up. At first, he didn't know why. The room was dark. The streetlight outside the window cast a faint orange glow across the floor. Michael listened carefully. Nothing. He closed his eyes again. Then he heard it. A sound from the hallway. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Someone walking outside his door. Michael opened his eyes. The footsteps moved past his apartment. Then stopped. Right outside. He waited. But no one knocked. The footsteps didn't continue. They just stopped. Michael frowned. Maybe a neighbor had come home late. He turned over and tried to sleep again. But something felt wrong. Because the hallway floor outside his door was old wooden boards. And old wooden boards always creak. But the footsteps he heard earlier had made no sound at all. The next morning, Michael left early for work. As he locked his door, he noticed something strange. At the end of the hallway was another apartment door. But unlike the others, this one looked different. The paint was faded, and a thick metal chain was wrapped around the handle. Michael walked closer. There was a small number above the door. Room 314. The chain looked old, like it had been there for years. When Michael returned that evening, he asked Mr. Harper about it. "The door at the end of the hallway," he said. "The one with the chain." Mr. Harper's expression changed immediately. For a moment, he didn't answer. Then he said quietly, "That room is not rented." Michael nodded. "Oh, is it being repaired?" Mr. Harper shook his head. "No." "Then why is it chained?" The landlord looked down the hallway. Then back at Michael. "Because," he said slowly, "no one should open that door." Michael laughed awkwardly. "Why not?" Mr. Harper didn't smile. "Just promise me something." "What?" "If you ever hear something from that room." He paused. "Don't go looking." Michael felt a chill run down his spine. Looking for what? But Mr. Harper was already walking away. That night, Michael tried to ignore the strange conversation. He told himself the landlord was just an old man who liked to scare new tenants. Old buildings always had stories. Still, when midnight came, Michael couldn't sleep. The apartment felt too quiet again. He stared at the ceiling, waiting, listening. Then, at 2:13 a.m. exactly, the sound returned. Footsteps in the hallway, slow, heavy, moving past his door, toward the end of the corridor, toward room 314. Michael sat up in bed. The footsteps stopped. Then something else happened. A sound that made his blood run cold. The metal chain at the end of the hallway moved, very slowly, like someone was trying to open the door from the inside. Michael sat upright in bed. The apartment was completely dark, except for the faint orange light from the street lamp outside the window. For a moment, he thought he might have imagined it. But then he heard it again. A soft metallic sound, clink, like a chain moving slowly. Michael held his breath. The sound came from the end of the hallway. From room 314. The same room Mr. Harper had warned him about. He glanced at the clock beside his bed. 2:13 a.m. Exactly the same time as the night before. Michael rubbed his face. Old building, he whispered to himself. Just the pipes, or the wind. But even as he said it, he knew that wasn't true. The sound came again. Clink, then silence. Michael stared at the door of his apartment. His heart beat faster. He told himself to stay in bed, to ignore it, but curiosity can be stronger than fear. After a minute, Michael slowly got out of bed. The floor felt cold beneath his feet. He walked quietly to his apartment door and placed his hand on the handle. For several seconds, he just stood there, listening. Nothing. Finally, he opened the door. The hallway outside was dimly lit by a single flickering light. The long corridor stretched toward the end of the building. And at the far end was room 314. Michael stepped into the hallway. The air felt colder out here. Much colder. He walked slowly, careful not to make noise. Each step echoed softly. Halfway down the corridor, he stopped. He could see the door clearly now. The thick metal chain was still wrapped around the handle. But something looked different. Michael squinted. The chain wasn't hanging the same way it had earlier that day. One of the loops had slipped slightly lower, like someone had been pulling on it. From the other side, Michael's stomach tightened. That's impossible, he muttered. No one lived in that room. Mr. Harper had said so. Still, Michael kept walking. Step by step, he approached the door. When he was only a few feet away, he noticed something else. The paint on the door looked scratched. Not old scratches. Fresh ones. Thin marks running vertically down the wood. Like something sharp had been dragged across it. Michael leaned closer. The scratches were uneven. Desperate. Almost like finger marks. A cold wave passed through his body. Suddenly, thump. Michael jumped back. The sound came from the other side of the door. Something had hit it. Hard. Michael froze. His breathing became shallow. For a moment, there was silence again. Then came another sound. A slow dragging noise. Like something moving across the floor inside the room. Michael's mind raced. Maybe someone was trapped in there. Maybe the landlord had locked someone inside. He stepped closer to the door. Hello? He called softly. No answer. Is someone in there? Still nothing. Then, a whisper. So quiet he almost didn't hear it. Help. Michael's eyes widened. He leaned closer. Did you say something? The whisper came again. But this time, it sounded wrong. Not weak. Not desperate. Just empty. Open. Michael's hand moved slowly toward the chain. But just before he touched it, something inside him stopped. He remembered Mr. Harper's warning. If you ever hear something from that room, don't go looking. Michael hesitated. Then the whisper changed. It became louder. Closer to the door. Michael? His blood froze. The voice knew his name. Michael stumbled backward. How do you know my name? He asked. No answer. Just silence. Then suddenly, bang! Something slammed violently against the door from inside. The chain rattled loudly. Michael nearly fell. Another bang followed. And another. Like something inside the room was trying to break out. Michael turned and ran down the hallway. He rushed back into his apartment and slammed the door behind him. His hands shook as he locked it. For the rest of the night, he sat on his bed, staring at the door. The banging stopped eventually. But Michael didn't sleep again. The next morning, Michael went straight to find Mr. Harper. The old landlord was sweeping the front steps of the building. When Michael approached, Mr. Harper looked up slowly. You heard it, didn't you? He said quietly. Michael stopped. You knew this would happen? Mr. Harper sighed. I was hoping it wouldn't. Michael stepped closer. There's someone inside room 314. Mr. Harper shook his head. No. Michael's voice rose. I heard them talking. Mr. Harper's face grew pale. What did the voice say? Michael hesitated, then answered. It asked me to open the door. The broom slipped slightly in Mr. Harper's hand. That's bad, he whispered. Michael stared at him. What do you mean, bad? Mr. Harper looked directly into his eyes. Because the last person who opened that door, he paused, was never seen again. Michael didn't sleep at all that night. The words of the landlord echoed in his mind. The last person who opened that door was never seen again. He sat in his apartment with the lights on until morning. Every small sound made him nervous. The building felt different now. Not just old, not just quiet, but wrong. Around 8 in the morning, Michael finally decided he needed answers. He couldn't keep living in a place like this without understanding what was happening. So he went downstairs to find Mr. Harper again. The old landlord was inside the small office near the entrance of the building. Stacks of papers and old folders filled the desk. When Michael entered, Mr. Harper looked up slowly. You shouldn't have gone into the hallway last night, he said quietly. Michael crossed his arms. You told me someone disappeared. Mr. Harper didn't respond. So tell me the truth, Michael continued. What is room 314? The landlord remained silent for a long moment. Then he slowly opened a drawer in his desk and pulled out a large rolled-up paper. It was yellow and worn with age. He carefully spread it across the desk. Michael stepped closer. It was a blueprint of the building. This building was constructed in 1926, Mr. Harper said. Michael nodded. That explains why everything creaks. But Mr. Harper wasn't smiling. Look closely, he said. Michael leaned forward and studied the drawing. The blueprint showed every floor of the building. Every hallway. Every apartment. Michael traced the corridor where his apartment was located. He found his room number. Then he followed the hallway toward the end. His finger stopped. His stomach tightened. Because something was missing. There was no room at the end of the hallway. Michael frowned. That can't be right. He looked again. The blueprint showed apartments 311, 312, and 313. But there was no 314. The hallway simply ended in a blank wall. Michael looked up slowly. But I saw the door. Mr. Harper nodded. Yes. And the chain. Yes. And I heard someone inside. The landlord sighed deeply. That room was never supposed to exist. A cold chill spread through Michael's body. What do you mean? Mr. Harper folded his hands. For decades, tenants have reported the same thing. Michael felt uneasy. What thing? Mr. Harper spoke slowly. Late at night, a door appears at the end of the hallway. Michael stared at him. Appears? The landlord nodded. Only sometimes. Michael laughed nervously. That doesn't make sense. Mr. Harper didn't react. The first report was in 1952. Michael's smile faded. A tenant claimed he heard someone crying inside a locked room. What happened to him? Michael asked. Mr. Harper looked down at the desk. He opened the door. Michael already knew the answer. And he disappeared. Mr. Harper nodded once. Michael swallowed. That's one person. The landlord shook his head. Not one. He opened another drawer and pulled out a thin folder. Inside were several old newspaper clippings. He placed them on the desk. Michael read the headlines. Local resident missing from apartment building 1968. Unsolved disappearance leaves family searching 1987. Police investigation continues 2003. Michael's hands trembled slightly. All from this building? Mr. Harper nodded again. Every single one lived on the 3rd floor. Michael looked back at the blueprint. At the end of the hallway. Yes. Michael suddenly remembered something. Last night, the voice said my name. The landlord's eyes widened. Your name? Michael nodded slowly. Mr. Harper leaned back in his chair. That means it noticed you. Michael felt a deep sense of dread. What does that mean? The old man hesitated before answering. It means the door might appear again tonight. Michael's heart pounded. I'm leaving, he said immediately. Mr. Harper didn't stop him. That would be wise. Michael returned to his apartment and began packing his suitcases. But as he moved around the room, something kept bothering him. The voice. How had it known his name? He had just moved in. No one in the building even knew him yet. Except, Michael froze. The whisper in the hallway had sounded familiar. Not like a stranger. More like someone he had heard before. Suddenly, he remembered something strange from the night before. The voice had sounded weak at first. But when it said his name, it sounded exactly like his own voice. Michael slowly turned toward the door of his apartment. The hallway outside was silent. But deep down, he had a terrible feeling. Tonight, the door to room 314 would appear again. And this time, it might not be asking politely. Michael spent the entire afternoon packing. 2 suitcases lay open on the floor. His clothes were folded quickly, almost carelessly. He didn't even bother organizing them. He just wanted to leave. The sooner, the better. But something strange kept slowing him down. Every time he walked near the door of his apartment, he felt a strange pressure in the air. Like the hallway outside was watching him. It made no sense. Yet the feeling wouldn't go away. Michael checked the time. 6:40 p.m. Still hours before midnight. Still hours before 2:13 a.m. He tried to laugh at himself. Maybe I'm just tired, he muttered. But deep inside, he knew it wasn't just imagination. Because he had heard the voice. And the voice had known his name. At 8 p.m., Michael decided to leave the building for a while. Fresh air might help him clear his mind. He walked down the quiet staircase and stepped outside. The evening air was cold but refreshing. Cars passed on the street. People walked by. Normal life. For the first time all day, Michael felt a little calmer. He walked to a small diner 2 blocks away and ordered a coffee. While he sat there, he kept thinking about what Mr. Harper had told him. 1952, 1968, 1987, 2003, people disappearing, all connected to room 314. Michael pulled out his phone and searched the internet. At first, nothing appeared. But after several minutes of digging through old articles, he found something interesting. A short report from a local newspaper. Young man missing after moving into Ashford Street apartment. Michael opened the article. The man had disappeared in 2003. His name was Andrew Collins. The article said he had only lived in the building for 3 days before vanishing. 3 days. Michael felt his stomach tighten. He had also been in the building for 3 days. He scrolled further down. Then he froze. Because there was a photo of Andrew. And Andrew looked almost the same age as Michael. Mid-20s. Short dark hair. Tired eyes. The resemblance was unsettling. Michael quickly closed the article. He suddenly didn't feel hungry anymore. By 10:30 p.m., Michael returned to the apartment building. The hallway felt colder than before. The old lights flickered softly above him. He unlocked his apartment door and stepped inside. His suitcases were still on the floor, ready to go. He planned to leave early the next morning. Before anything else could happen. Michael checked the clock. 11:12 p.m. Still hours away. He decided to try sleeping for a while. Maybe nothing would happen tonight. Maybe the door wouldn't appear again. Maybe. Michael suddenly sat up. He had heard something. A faint sound in the hallway. Not footsteps. Something softer. Like someone breathing. Michael slowly walked to his door. He pressed his ear against it. For a moment, nothing. Then a whisper. Very faint. Very close. Michael? His heart began pounding. The voice was outside his door now. Not at the end of the hallway. Right outside. Michael stepped back. Who's there? He called. No answer. Then the whisper returned. But this time it sounded different. It sounded exactly like his own voice. Open the door? Michael's hands trembled. He forced himself not to move. Not to touch the handle. Because suddenly he understood something terrible. The voice wasn't asking politely anymore. It was learning. Learning how to sound like him. Learning how to trick him. The whisper came again. "You're already inside?" Michael's blood turned cold. "What?" he whispered. The voice answered softly. "You've always been inside?" Suddenly the hallway light flickered violently. Michael backed away from the door. At that exact moment, the clock beside his bed changed. 2:13 a.m. And from the end of the hallway, he heard the slow metallic sound again. Clink. The chain on room 314 was moving. But this time, the sound was louder. Much louder. Like something inside the room was pulling harder than before. And then, for the first time since Michael moved into the building, the chain fell to the floor. Michael stood frozen in the middle of his apartment. The sound of the metal chain hitting the floor echoed faintly through the hallway. Clink. Then silence. Complete silence. Michael stared at the door of his apartment, his heart pounding so loudly he could hear it in his ears. The chain was gone, which meant only one thing. Room 314 was open. For several seconds, Michael couldn't move. Every instinct told him to stay inside, to lock the door, to wait until morning. But the silence outside felt heavy, unnatural. And curiosity slowly pushed against his fear. Michael checked the clock again. 2:13 a.m. Exactly the same time as every other night. He swallowed nervously. Then he walked slowly toward his apartment door. Each step felt heavier than the last. He placed his hand on the handle. Cold metal. For a moment, he considered turning back. But the thought of that open door at the end of the hallway kept pulling at his mind. Finally, he unlocked the door. The hallway outside was darker than usual. The overhead light flickered weakly, casting long shadows across the floor. Michael stepped out. The corridor felt colder than ever. And at the far end of the hallway, room 314 was open. The door stood slightly ajar. Just a few inches. The broken chain lay on the floor beside it. Michael felt a deep chill run down his spine. He had seen that door locked just yesterday. But now it was open. Slowly, he walked toward it. His footsteps echoed softly through the empty corridor. Step, step, step. The closer he got, the colder the air became. By the time he reached the end of the hallway, his breath was visible in the air. Michael stopped a few feet from the door. Inside the room was complete darkness. No lights, no movement, just an empty black space beyond the doorway. "Hello?" he called quietly. No answer. He pushed the door open slightly. It creaked slowly. The sound echoed unnaturally loud in the hallway. Michael leaned forward and looked inside. At first, he couldn't see anything. The room looked empty. Just darkness. Then his eyes slowly adjusted. And he noticed something strange. The room was much bigger than it should be. Much bigger than any apartment in the building. The walls seemed far away. Like the room stretched far deeper than the building itself. Michael frowned. "That's impossible," he whispered. Then he heard something. A soft sound from inside the room. Footsteps. Very slow footsteps. Michael's body stiffened. Someone was inside, standing somewhere in the darkness. "Who's there?" Michael asked. No answer. Then a shape slowly appeared from the shadows. A human figure. Standing in the center of the room. The figure wasn't moving. Just standing there, facing away from the door. Michael felt both relief and confusion. "Hey," he called. "Are you okay?" Still no response. The person continued standing silently. Michael took one careful step into the room. The air inside felt colder than ice. "Hello?" he said again. The figure slowly moved. Very slowly. It turned around. Michael's heart stopped. Because the face looking back at him was his own face. The figure looked exactly like him. Same hair, same eyes, same clothes. But something about it was wrong. The smile. The thing in the room was smiling. But Michael hadn't smiled. The copy tilted its head slightly. And then it spoke. With Michael's voice. "You finally came." Michael stumbled backward. "What are you?" The copy's smile grew wider. "I've been waiting for you." Michael's breathing became fast and shallow. This isn't real. The copy slowly took one step forward. You shouldn't have opened the door. Michael turned to run back into the hallway. But when he looked behind him, the doorway was gone. There was no hallway anymore. No building. No exit. Only darkness stretching endlessly behind him. Michael turned back toward the figure. The copy was standing closer now. Much closer. Its smile stretched unnaturally wide. You see, it said softly. This room isn't inside the building. Michael felt terror rise in his chest. Then where am I? The copy leaned closer and whispered the answer. You're inside the place where people go when they open the wrong door. Michael stared at the thing wearing his face. The smile on it was wrong. Too wide. Too still. Like a mask that didn't belong to a human. You're not real, Michael whispered. The copy tilted its head slowly. Neither are you. Michael's chest tightened. What does that mean? The copy didn't answer. Instead, it slowly stepped aside, as if inviting Michael to look deeper into the room. For the first time, Michael noticed something strange in the darkness behind it. Shapes. Faint shapes moving far in the distance. At first, he thought they were shadows. But shadows don't move on their own. Michael squinted into the darkness. Then his stomach dropped. They weren't shadows. They were people, standing quietly in the far corners of the enormous room. Dozens of them, maybe more, all standing still, watching. Michael's voice shook. Who are they? The copy looked back toward them. They opened the door. Michael felt a cold wave run through his body. The missing people? The copy smiled again. Yes. Michael took a step backward. No, that's impossible. But then something moved among the figures. One of them stepped forward slowly. A man. Thin. Pale. His clothes looked old and worn. Like he had been wearing them for years. Michael stared at him. Who are you? The man stopped a few feet away. His eyes looked tired. Almost empty. My name was Andrew. Michael felt his heart stop. Andrew. The same name from the news article. Andrew Collins. You disappeared 20 years ago, Michael said quietly. Andrew nodded slowly. I thought I would go back. Michael looked around the dark room. Why didn't you? Andrew gave a sad smile. No one leaves this place. The copy of Michael chuckled softly behind them. Andrew continued speaking. At first, the room looks empty. But the longer you stay, the bigger it becomes. Michael's breathing became uneven. What do you mean? Andrew pointed into the darkness. Michael followed his finger. Far away, more figures were standing. Hundreds of them. People from different decades. Different clothes. Different times. All trapped inside the same endless room. They are the ones who opened the door, Andrew said. Michael shook his head. But why? Andrew looked toward the copy. Because it needs us. Michael turned slowly. The copy was watching them calmly. What do you mean, needs us? Andrew lowered his voice. It feeds on us. Michael felt sick. Feeds? Andrew nodded. Not our bodies. Something worse. Michael waited. Our memories. Michael frowned. What? Andrew continued. The longer you stay here, the more you forget. Your life. Your family. Your name. Michael's stomach twisted. What happens when you forget everything? Andrew looked back into the darkness. You become one of them. Michael noticed the other figures standing silently. They weren't talking. They weren't moving. Just staring. Like empty shells. How long have you been here? Michael asked. Andrew thought for a moment. I don't remember exactly. That's how it starts. Michael suddenly realized something terrifying. Andrew had paused before saying his name earlier. Like he almost couldn't remember it. Michael turned toward the copy again. So what are you? The copy smiled calmly. I'm the part of you that stays here. Michael's heart pounded. What? When people enter this room, the copy explained, something separates. One part stays. One part leaves. Michael's voice trembled. Leaves? Where? The copy pointed toward the darkness behind Michael. The hallway. Michael turned around. And suddenly, the hallway door appeared again. Right behind him. The same doorway that had disappeared earlier. Michael stared at it. You mean, I can go back? The copy nodded. Of course. Michael rushed toward the door. But Andrew grabbed his arm. Wait. Michael looked back. What? Andrew's face was serious. If you leave, you won't remember this place. Michael frowned. That sounds good. Andrew shook his head. No. Because the part of you that stays here will remember everything. Michael slowly turned toward the copy again. The copy smiled wider. You see? No one truly escapes. Michael stared at the doorway behind him. The hallway had returned. The same narrow corridor. The same flickering light. The same worn wooden floor. For a moment, it looked exactly like the hallway outside his apartment. Like nothing had happened. Like room 314 had never existed. Michael took a step toward the door. Freedom. Just a few steps away. But Andrew's words echoed in his mind. The part of you that stays here will remember everything. Michael turned slowly toward the copy again. The thing wearing his face stood calmly in the center of the dark room. Watching him, smiling. So if I leave, Michael said slowly, you stay here? The copy nodded. Yes. And you're, me? Part of you, the copy answered. Michael looked at Andrew. And everyone else? Andrew sighed quietly. They left. Michael frowned. But they're still here. Andrew nodded. Their other half is. Michael looked back into the darkness. All the silent figures were still standing. Watching. Waiting. It suddenly felt like the room itself was alive. Listening to every word, Michael took another step toward the doorway. Then I'm leaving. The copy tilted its head slightly. You can. But remember. Michael stopped. Remember what? The copy's smile slowly widened. You won't remember this place when you go back. Michael nodded. That's fine. But the copy shook its head. No, it's not. Michael frowned. Why? The copy took a slow step closer. Because when you forget, you might come back. Michael felt a cold chill run down his spine. What do you mean? The copy looked toward the endless darkness. This door appears to many people. Michael remembered the newspaper articles. People disappearing. Over decades. They all forgot, the copy continued. They all thought the room was just a dream. Michael's voice became quiet. And then? The copy smiled again. And then curiosity brought them back. Michael suddenly felt uneasy. What if I never return? The copy laughed softly. You already did. Michael's stomach tightened. What? The copy pointed toward Andrew. Ask him. Michael turned. Andrew looked uncomfortable. Andrew? Michael said. Andrew rubbed his face slowly. I don't remember everything clearly anymore. But I know one thing. What? Michael asked. Andrew looked directly at him. I opened the door twice. Michael's heart skipped a beat. You came back here? Andrew nodded slowly. The first time I escaped. Michael stared at him. Then why did you come back? Andrew closed his eyes. I thought it was a dream. Michael felt his chest tighten. The copy's smile grew wider. You see? No one believes it the first time. Michael turned back toward the doorway again. The hallway looked normal, safe. But suddenly something strange happened. From deep inside the darkness of the room, another sound appeared. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Coming closer. Michael froze. Andrew's face went pale. No, he whispered. The footsteps continued. Another figure slowly walked out of the darkness. And when Michael saw the face, his blood ran cold. Because the person stepping forward was another Michael. Same face. Same clothes. Same expression. The new copy looked confused. Like he had just arrived. He looked around the room. Then at Michael. What is this place? The new copy asked. Michael stepped back. The first copy laughed quietly. You see? Michael's voice trembled. How many of me are there? The first copy smiled calmly. That depends. On what? On how many times you come back. Michael looked at the new version of himself. The new Michael turned toward the hallway door. Wait, he said nervously. I just came from the hallway. Michael's chest tightened. What do you mean? The new Michael looked confused. There was a door at the end of the hallway. Andrew whispered quietly. Another one. Michael's breathing became uneven. That means. The first copy finished the sentence. Another, you just opened the door. Michael slowly turned back toward the darkness. And suddenly he understood something horrifying. Room 314 wasn't just trapping people. It was collecting versions of them. Every time someone opened the door, another version of them appeared inside. The first copy stepped closer and whispered softly. Soon, Michael stood completely still. 3 versions of himself were now in the room. One standing beside the doorway, one smiling calmly in the center, and one who had just walked out of the darkness. The new Michael looked confused and frightened. What is this place? He asked again. Andrew stepped forward slowly. You opened the door, didn't you? The new Michael nodded. Yes, there was a door at the end of the hallway. Michael felt a terrible weight in his chest. Another version. Another copy. The smiling one chuckled quietly. You see, it said. It happens every night. Michael turned toward it. What do you mean every night? The copy's eyes glowed slightly in the darkness. Every time someone opens the door, a new version arrives. Michael shook his head. That doesn't make sense. The copy shrugged. This room is not built with logic. The new Michael looked between them nervously. Someone needs to explain what's happening. Andrew sighed. You're inside room 314. The new Michael frowned. There's no room 314. Andrew nodded slowly. Exactly. The words hung in the air. The new Michael looked around at the endless darkness. Then he saw the other figures standing in the distance. Hundreds of silent shapes. Watching. What happened to them? He whispered. Andrew hesitated. They stayed too long. Michael noticed something strange then. The silent figures in the distance looked wrong. Their bodies seemed slightly twisted. Their heads tilted at unnatural angles. And none of them blinked. Michael pointed. Why are they standing like that? Andrew didn't answer immediately. Instead, he whispered quietly. Because they're changing. The new Michael turned toward him. Changing into what? Andrew swallowed. I don't know. The smiling copy spoke again. They're becoming part of the room. Michael's stomach twisted. What does that mean? The copy walked slowly past them, toward one of the silent figures. As it stepped closer, the figure reacted. Its head turned slowly, too slowly. The movement looked stiff, unnatural, like a puppet on invisible strings. Michael felt his skin crawl. The copy placed a hand on the figure's shoulder. You see, it said calmly. The longer they stay here, the less human they become. The figure opened its mouth, but no sound came out. Its eyes were empty, like glass. Michael stepped back. What happened to it? Andrew answered quietly. It forgot everything. Michael looked confused. What do you mean? Andrew spoke slowly. When the room finishes taking your memories, it takes the rest of you too. The new Michael looked terrified. So we're trapped here forever? Andrew shook his head. No. The smiling copy pointed toward the doorway again. You can still leave. Michael looked at the door. The hallway was still there. Still waiting. But if we leave, Michael said slowly, we forget everything. The copy nodded. Yes. Michael frowned. So we might come back. Exactly. The copy smiled wider. Eventually everyone comes back. Suddenly something strange happened. A sound echoed deep inside the darkness. A low cracking noise. Like bones moving. Everyone turned. One of the silent figures began to move. But not like a person. Its arms bent at strange angles. Its neck twisted slowly. Too far. Much farther than a human neck should turn. The creature's empty eyes locked onto Michael. Andrew whispered in fear. It's starting again. Michael's voice trembled. What is? Andrew stepped backward. The transformation. The creature began walking toward them. Its movements were jerky, broken, like its body no longer understood how to move correctly. Behind it, several other figures started to move too. Michael felt pure terror rising inside him. What do we do? The new Michael shouted. Andrew pointed toward the doorway. Run. But the smiling copy didn't move. It just watched calmly. The creature came closer. Its mouth slowly opened, and when it spoke, the voice that came out was horrifying. Because it sounded exactly like Michael. You shouldn't have opened the door? Michael realized something terrifying. These creatures weren't strangers. They were former versions of people. People who had stayed too long. People who had forgotten who they were. And now, they were becoming something else. Something that belonged to the room. Andrew grabbed Michael's arm. We need to leave now. The creatures were getting closer. More of them were emerging from the darkness. Dozens, maybe hundreds, all moving toward the doorway. Toward the living ones. Michael looked back at the exit. The hallway light flickered. Still there. Still open. But suddenly he understood something terrible. If all of them ran to the door, some of them might not escape. And the creatures behind them were getting faster. There will be more of you than you can count. For the first time since the investigation began, Daniel felt something close to hope. The police had officially reopened the case of Emily Carter's disappearance. The diary he found in the attic had been handed over as evidence, and investigators were beginning to believe that something terrible had indeed happened inside the house. But even as the legal system slowly moved forward, Daniel knew something else was happening. Something inside the house had awakened. That night, the air felt different. Heavy. The kind of stillness that presses against your ears. Daniel sat at the kitchen table, the diary open in front of him. He had read every page at least 3 times, but something about it still bothered him. There was one page that seemed unfinished. The final entry ended with a sentence that simply said, "Tonight he told me about the door." And then nothing. No explanation. No description. Just that one line. Daniel turned the page again. Blank. Several blank pages followed. He leaned back in his chair. "A door," he murmured. Just then, a soft sound echoed from upstairs. Knock. Daniel froze. The sound came again. Knock. Slow. Deliberate. From the attic. Daniel's stomach tightened. For weeks, the attic had been silent. Whatever had been there before seemed to have retreated after the diary was discovered. Until now. He grabbed his flashlight and walked toward the stairs. Each step creaked loudly in the silence. Knock. Again. Daniel reached the attic ladder and stared up at the wooden hatch. "Hello?" he called. No answer. Just silence. Then, knock. 3 times. From directly above the hatch. Daniel hesitated. His mind screamed that opening the attic at midnight was a terrible idea. But curiosity pushed him forward. He pulled the cord. The ladder unfolded slowly. Dust drifted down into the hallway. Daniel climbed up carefully, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. The attic looked exactly as it had before. Old boxes. Broken furniture. The diary still sitting where he had originally found it. But something was different. The far wall. Daniel stepped closer. At first, he thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. But then he saw it clearly. A door. A narrow wooden door set into the attic wall. He was certain it hadn't been there before. He had explored every inch of the attic weeks earlier. There had been no door. None. Yet now it stood there quietly. As if it had always existed. Daniel approached slowly. The wood looked old. Very old. The handle was made of dark iron, worn smooth by time. He placed his hand against the door. Cold. Freezing cold. Colder than the winter air outside. Then, a whisper. Right behind him. "Don't." Daniel spun around. No one was there. The attic was empty. But he knew that voice. Emily. He felt it in his bones. The same gentle voice that had appeared in his dreams. "Don't what?" he whispered. Silence. Then the whisper came again. Closer this time. "Don't open it." Daniel stared back at the door. His heart pounded. Why would Emily warn him? What was behind it? And if the door had appeared only tonight? Who had put it there? Then the handle moved. By itself. Click. The door unlocked. Daniel stepped back. The door slowly creaked open. Inside was nothing but darkness. But from deep inside the darkness came a sound. Footsteps. Slow. Dragging. Something was coming toward the door. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. The footsteps grew louder. Closer. Closer. And then, A shape appeared inside the doorway. Tall, thin, too thin to be human. Its head tilted slightly. Watching him, studying him, Daniel felt the temperature drop suddenly. His breath turned to fog in the air. And then the figure spoke. Its voice sounded like broken glass scraping together. "You found the diary." Daniel couldn't move. "You woke the house." The figure took one step closer. Its face remained hidden in shadow. "You should not have done that." Daniel forced himself to speak. "What happened to Emily Carter?" For a moment, the creature was silent. Then it laughed. A dry, hollow laugh. "She opened the door." Daniel's blood ran cold. The creature lifted one long finger and pointed behind him. "To the place where lost things go." Daniel slowly turned. Inside the doorway behind him, he could now see something else. A staircase. Descending downward, far deeper than the house should allow. The steps vanished into endless darkness. And from somewhere deep below, voices whispered, hundreds of them, crying, calling, begging. Daniel realized something terrible. Emily had never simply disappeared. She had fallen through that door, into whatever lay beneath the house. And now the door had opened again. The creature smiled in the darkness. "Would you like to see where she went?" The voices below suddenly grew louder. And one of them, one voice among hundreds, called his name. "Daniel?" It was Emily, from somewhere deep below the stairs. And the creature stepped aside, inviting him in. Daniel stood frozen in the attic, staring at the staircase that should not exist. The door in the wall remained open, breathing out cold air that smelled like damp earth and rusted metal. The darkness beyond it seemed almost alive, slowly shifting like fog. And from somewhere deep below, voices whispered, hundreds of them, some crying, some begging, some simply repeating the same words again and again. "Help me." Daniel's heart pounded so loudly he could hear it in his ears. Then he heard it again. "Daniel?" Emily's voice. Soft, weak, but unmistakable. The creature standing beside the doorway tilted its head slightly, watching him with quiet amusement. "You hear her," it said. Its voice sounded like something dragging across broken glass. Daniel swallowed. "Where is she?" The creature slowly lifted one thin hand and pointed down the staircase. Below. Daniel stepped closer to the doorway. The wooden steps looked ancient, worn down as if thousands of people had walked them over many years. But that made no sense. This house had only been standing for about 80 years. And yet the staircase looked centuries old. "How deep does it go?" Daniel asked. The creature smiled. "As far as the forgotten things fall." Daniel hesitated. Every instinct told him to run, to leave the house, to call the police. But he already knew what they would say. They would see an empty attic. A normal wall. No door. No staircase. No creature. Everything that had happened to him existed only inside this house. And the only chance to find Emily was down there. He tightened his grip on the flashlight. "If I go down there," Daniel said, "will I find her?" The creature stepped aside. "I suppose you will." Daniel took one deep breath. Then he stepped through the doorway. The moment his foot touched the first stair, the air changed. The attic behind him suddenly felt far away, like it belonged to another world. The staircase spiraled downward slowly, the walls around it made of rough stone instead of wood. Daniel's flashlight barely illuminated more than a few steps ahead. The whispers grew louder as he descended. Dozens of voices now, maybe hundreds, each one desperate, each one lost. Some sounded old, some sounded young, and some sounded like children. Daniel's stomach twisted. "How many people are down here?" he whispered. No one answered. He continued walking, step by step. The deeper he went, the colder the air became. Soon his breath formed clouds in front of his face. After what felt like 15 minutes of walking, the staircase finally ended. Daniel stepped into a large underground room. The beam of his flashlight swept across the darkness. And what he saw made his blood run cold. The room was enormous, like a cavern beneath the house. And everywhere, people, or what remained of them. Pale figures wandered through the darkness. Some sat on the floor staring into nothing. Some stood motionless against the walls. And others simply walked in slow circles, whispering to themselves. Daniel realized something horrifying. These were not ghosts. They were real people. Lost. Forgotten. Trapped. He stepped forward slowly. "Emily?" he called. Several heads turned toward him. Their eyes were hollow. Empty. As if they had been here for years. One man approached him slowly. His clothes looked like they came from another era. Maybe the 1950s. "You shouldn't be here," the man said quietly. Daniel's throat tightened. "How long have you been down here?" The man thought for a moment. "I don't know." His voice sounded distant. "Time doesn't move the same way here." Daniel looked around the cavern again. There had to be at least 50 people. Maybe more. All trapped beneath a normal house in Ohio. "How do we leave?" Daniel asked. The man slowly shook his head. "No one leaves." Daniel felt panic rise in his chest. "That's impossible." The man looked toward the darkness behind Daniel. "No," he said softly. "It isn't." Daniel turned and saw her, standing near the far wall. Emily Carter. She looked exactly like the photos in the diary. Same brown hair. Same gentle eyes. But her face was pale. And her eyes carried a sadness that seemed far too heavy for someone her age. "Emily?" Daniel whispered. She stepped closer. "You shouldn't have come," she said. Daniel felt relief wash over him. "You're alive." Emily gave a faint, tired smile. "Yes." Then she looked toward the staircase behind him. "But now you're trapped too." Daniel's heart dropped. "What?" Emily pointed upward. Daniel turned and felt his stomach twist. The staircase was gone. Where the entrance had been, there was now only solid stone. No stairs. No doorway. Nothing. Daniel slowly looked back at Emily. "What is this place?" Emily's voice trembled slightly. "It's where the house keeps the people it chooses." Daniel felt cold fear spread through his chest. "And the creature upstairs?" Emily's eyes darkened. "That's the keeper." She looked directly at him. "And it never opens the door twice." Then, suddenly, a loud echo filled the cavern. A heavy sound, like a giant door slamming shut somewhere above them. The whispers around the room grew louder. Desperate. Hopeless. Emily stepped closer to Daniel and spoke quietly. "Welcome to the basement of the house." And for the first time since entering the staircase, Daniel realized something truly terrifying. The people here had stopped trying to escape. Because after a while, they understood something. The door never opens again. Daniel stood in the cold underground cavern, staring at the solid stone wall where the staircase had once been. Just minutes ago, he had walked down those steps. Now they were gone, as if they had never existed. The whispers around him continued, soft, restless sounds that filled the enormous underground space like a constant wind. Daniel turned slowly to Emily. "There has to be another way out," he said. Emily did not answer immediately. Instead, she looked at him with a kind of sadness that only someone trapped for a very long time could understand. "Everyone says that when they first arrive," she said quietly. Daniel shook his head. "No, I mean it. There must be something." Emily sighed. "Come with me." She began walking across the cavern. Daniel followed. As they passed through the crowd of pale, silent people, he noticed something disturbing. Many of them were staring at him. Not with anger, not with fear, but with something worse. Hope. A young woman sitting on the ground grabbed his sleeve. "Did it open again?" she asked desperately. Daniel hesitated. "The door, upstairs?" Her eyes widened. "Yes, the door." Daniel slowly shook his head. "It closed." The woman's face collapsed with disappointment. She released his sleeve and returned to staring at the ground. Emily continued walking. "You see," she said softly. "They always hope someone new will bring the door back." Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. "How many people are down here?" Emily looked around the cavern. "Right now? Maybe 60. Daniel frowned. "Right now?" Emily nodded. "People disappear sometimes." Daniel stopped walking. "Disappear?" Emily turned back to him. "Yes. Where do they go? Emily hesitated. Then she pointed toward the far side of the cavern. There, in the darkness, Daniel could see a long tunnel carved into the stone. Black, silent, and somehow much darker than the rest of the cavern. The keeper takes them, Emily said quietly. Daniel felt his chest tighten. For what? Emily shook her head slowly. No one knows. They continued walking. Eventually, Emily led him to a small corner of the cavern where a few broken chairs and old blankets were arranged against the wall. This is where I stay, she said. Daniel sat down on a nearby stone. His mind struggled to process everything. You've been here 5 years, he said. Emily nodded. I think so. You think? Emily gave a faint smile. Time doesn't work the same way down here. Daniel looked up at the ceiling. How is that possible? Emily shrugged. Ask the house. Daniel leaned forward. You said the house chooses people. Emily nodded. Yes. Why? Emily looked toward the darkness above them. No one knows. Daniel thought for a moment. Everyone who disappears from the town. They come here, Emily finished. Daniel suddenly remembered something. The diary. Emily looked surprised. You found it? Daniel nodded. In the attic. Emily sighed. I hoped someone would. Daniel stared at her. You left it on purpose. Emily nodded slowly. Yes. Why? Emily looked around the cavern. At first, I thought someone might rescue us. Daniel felt a spark of hope. So there is a way. Emily shook her head. No. Daniel's hope faded. But I wanted people to know what happened. She looked at him seriously. So they would never enter that house. Daniel laughed quietly. Well, that plan didn't work. Emily almost smiled. No, it didn't. Suddenly, a loud metallic sound echoed through the cavern. Everyone froze. The whispers stopped. Complete silence filled the underground space. Daniel looked around. What was that? Emily's face turned pale. Her voice dropped to a whisper. It's coming. Daniel felt cold fear creep into his chest. What is? Emily pointed toward the dark tunnel. The keeper. Slowly, a sound began echoing from the tunnel. Footsteps. Slow, heavy, dragging across stone. One by one, the people in the cavern began backing away from the tunnel entrance. Some covered their faces. Others simply closed their eyes. Daniel turned toward the darkness. At first, he saw nothing. Then, something moved inside the tunnel. A tall shape. Too tall. Its head nearly touched the stone ceiling. The same creature Daniel had seen upstairs slowly stepped out of the darkness. But now Daniel could see it clearly. And it was far worse than he imagined. Its arms were long and thin, reaching almost to the ground. Its skin looked pale gray, stretched tight across its bones. And its face? Still had no eyes. Just that long, smiling mouth. The creature sniffed the air slowly. Then its head turned, directly toward Daniel. The smile widened. Well, it said softly. You came down after all. Daniel's hands began shaking. The creature slowly walked into the cavern. Every step echoed loudly. New arrivals are always interesting, it said. Its head tilted slightly. But they rarely last long. Emily stepped in front of Daniel. No, she said firmly. The creature laughed softly. Oh, Emily. Its voice sounded almost amused. You've been here longer than most. Emily didn't move. You promised. The creature tilted its head. Did I? Emily's hands were trembling. You said if someone found the diary? The creature leaned closer. That the door might open again? Emily nodded. Yes. The creature's smile widened even further. Emily, it said gently. I lie. A wave of quiet horror spread through the cavern. Daniel felt his stomach drop. The creature slowly looked around the room. Then it pointed toward one of the people near the wall. You. A middle-aged man froze. No, he whispered. Please. The creature took one long step forward. Come. The man collapsed to his knees. Please don't take me. But the creature had already grabbed him. Its long fingers wrapped around the man's arm. And with terrifying ease, it began dragging him toward the dark tunnel. The man screamed. The sound echoed across the cavern. Daniel stood up. Stop. Everyone turned toward him. Even the creature paused. Slowly, it turned its head toward Daniel. You're brave, it said. Then it smiled again. Or stupid. Daniel stepped forward. Let him go. The creature studied him for a moment. Then it said something that made Daniel's blood run cold. Careful, Daniel. Daniel froze. How do you know my name? The creature chuckled softly. I know everyone who enters my house. Then its head leaned closer. So tell me? The smile stretched wider. What makes you think you were invited here by accident? The creature's smile stretched wider as it stared down at Daniel. What makes you think you were invited here by accident? Daniel felt the cold stone floor beneath his feet, but suddenly it felt unstable, like the ground itself had shifted. I wasn't invited, Daniel said. I was investigating a missing person. The creature chuckled softly, the sound echoing across the cavern. Everyone says that. Its long fingers tightened around the arm of the man it was dragging. The man struggled weakly. Please, don't take me. But the creature barely noticed. Its attention remained fixed on Daniel. You came because of the diary, it said. Daniel's heart skipped a beat. Yes. The creature nodded slowly. Exactly as planned. Emily stepped forward again. What do you mean planned? The creature tilted its head. Oh, Emily, it said gently. You still believe you left that diary by accident? Emily's face turned pale. I hid it. The creature laughed quietly. No. It leaned closer. I allowed you to hide it. A murmur of fear spread through the cavern. Daniel felt something heavy settle in his stomach. Why? He asked. The creature's smile widened. Because every house needs new guests. The people around them began whispering nervously. You mean? Daniel said slowly. You wanted someone to find the diary. The creature nodded. Of course. Emily shook her head. No, that's not possible. The creature looked at her almost kindly. You've been here 5 years, Emily. Yes. And in those 5 years? The creature gestured toward the cavern. How many new people arrived? Emily froze. She looked around slowly. Daniel followed her gaze. Some of the people in the cavern looked younger. Some wore modern clothes. Clothes from the present day. Emily's voice trembled. More than 20. The creature nodded. And how do you think they found the house? Emily's eyes widened. No. The creature finished the sentence for her. They followed the story. Daniel felt cold realization spreading through his mind. The diary? Yes, the creature said. It was the perfect bait. Emily shook her head in disbelief. But people wouldn't keep coming. The creature smiled again. You underestimate curiosity. It slowly began pacing across the cavern. Humans cannot resist a mystery. It pointed upward toward the unseen house above them. A missing girl. A haunted house. A diary full of warnings. Daniel whispered the truth before the creature could. A perfect story. The creature clapped its long hands slowly. Exactly. Daniel's chest tightened. You turned the diary into a trap. The creature nodded proudly. Stories are powerful things. It leaned closer. Especially the scary ones. Emily stepped backward, horrified. That means, her voice cracked, every person here came because of me. The creature smiled gently. Yes. Emily's knees almost gave out. Daniel caught her arm. This isn't your fault, he said quietly. But the creature laughed. Oh, but it is. Emily shook her head desperately. No. You wrote every word. The creature's voice grew softer. You warned them. But warnings are the most powerful invitations. Daniel suddenly felt something even more disturbing. Wait, he said. The creature looked at him. Yes? You said the house chooses people. That's right. But if the diary brings people here. Daniel's voice lowered. Then who chose me? For the first time since arriving in the cavern. The creature stopped smiling. The silence felt heavy. The people in the cavern watched carefully. Then the creature slowly walked toward Daniel. Step by step. Until its face was only inches away. You really don't know? Daniel's throat tightened. No. The creature leaned closer. You were not brought here by the diary. Daniel felt a wave of dread. Then how? The creature whispered the answer. You were brought here by the house. Emily looked confused. What's the difference? The creature straightened slowly. The diary attracts visitors. It pointed at Daniel. But the house chooses keepers. Daniel's heart nearly stopped. Keepers? The creature nodded. Yes. Emily shook her head. No, that's impossible. The creature looked almost amused. Emily, do you know how long I've been here? Emily hesitated. No. The creature raised one long finger. 212 years. A shocked silence filled the cavern. Daniel stared at it. That's not possible. The creature shrugged. It wasn't always me. Daniel felt cold fear spreading through his chest. What do you mean? The creature looked toward the darkness of the tunnel. The house needs someone to take care of it. Daniel whispered. A keeper. The creature nodded. Yes. Emily suddenly understood. Her eyes widened with horror. No. The creature turned back to Daniel. And I'm getting tired. Daniel's stomach dropped. What are you saying? The creature's smile slowly returned. I think it's time the house had a new keeper. The cavern became completely silent. Dozens of pale faces turned toward Daniel. Emily grabbed his arm. No, she whispered. You can't listen to it. But the creature only laughed softly. Oh, Emily. It leaned closer to Daniel again. You've already heard the house, haven't you? Daniel froze. Memories flashed through his mind. The whispers. The strange feeling in the attic. The voice he thought was Emily calling his name. The creature whispered again. The house has been speaking to you since the moment you arrived. Daniel's voice shook. That wasn't Emily? The creature smiled. No. A chill ran down Daniel's spine. Then whose voice was it? The creature answered calmly. The house. Emily stepped backward. No, no. The creature raised its long arm and pointed at Daniel. The house wants you. The whispers in the cavern suddenly grew louder. As if the walls themselves were breathing. Daniel felt something moving inside his mind. A quiet voice. Soft. Patient. Waiting. Then he heard it again. The same whisper he heard upstairs. Daniel? But this time, he understood something terrifying. The voice wasn't asking him to leave. It was asking him to stay. Forever. The whisper echoed inside Daniel's mind. Daniel? This time it was clearer than before. Not coming from the walls. Not coming from the cavern. But from somewhere deep inside his head. Daniel grabbed his temples. Make it stop, he said. Emily looked at him with fear. What's happening? Daniel's breathing became uneven. I can hear it. The creature watched calmly, almost curiously. Good, it said. That means the house likes you. Emily shook her head. No, you're lying. The creature turned toward her. You still don't understand. It gestured toward Daniel. The house doesn't speak to everyone. Daniel dropped to one knee. The whisper was growing stronger. More voices joining it. Hundreds of them. All repeating the same thing. Stay, stay, stay. Daniel clenched his fists. I'm not staying here. The creature tilted its head. That's not your decision anymore. Emily rushed to his side. Daniel, listen to me. He looked up at her. Her voice was the only thing that sounded real. You have to fight it, she said. Daniel nodded weakly. I'm trying. The creature slowly began walking around them. You see, Emily, it said, this is how it always begins. Emily glared at it. What do you mean? The creature smiled. When I first came here, the house spoke to me too. Daniel forced himself to stand. You said you've been here 200 years. The creature nodded. 212. What were you before that? Daniel asked. The creature stopped walking. For a moment, it seemed to be remembering something very far away. Then it spoke. I was a carpenter. Emily frowned. A carpenter? Yes. The creature pointed upward. I built the house. A heavy silence fell over the cavern. Daniel stared at it. You're saying, this whole place exists because of you? The creature shook its head slowly. No, I only built the walls. It looked around the underground cavern. But the house was already here. Emily's voice trembled. What does that mean? The creature spoke softly. Something was sleeping beneath this land long before the house was built. Daniel felt a chill run through him. And when you built the house? The creature finished the sentence. It woke up. The whispers around the cavern suddenly grew louder again. Daniel could feel the voice pressing harder against his mind. You belong here? You belong here? Emily grabbed his arm. Don't listen. Daniel clenched his jaw. I'm trying not to. The creature continued speaking calmly. At first I thought I was losing my mind. It whispered to me while I worked. While I slept. While I ate. Daniel's voice shook. Just like now. The creature nodded. Yes. Emily asked quietly. So what happened? The creature looked directly at Daniel. Eventually, I stopped fighting it. Daniel felt fear rise inside his chest. And that's when you became the keeper. The creature smiled. Yes. Emily looked around the cavern at the trapped people. So all of this is just to feed the house? The creature tilted its head slightly. Not feed. Grow. Daniel forced the voice out of his head long enough to speak. Grow into what? The creature pointed upward again. The house you see above is only the beginning. Daniel frowned. What do you mean? The creature's smile widened. Every person who disappears here becomes part of it. Emily's face turned pale. Part of the house? The creature nodded. Yes. The walls grow stronger. The tunnels grow deeper. The house becomes bigger. Daniel suddenly understood something horrifying. That's why the basement keeps expanding. The creature nodded again. The house has been growing for over 2 centuries. Emily whispered. How big is it now? The creature looked toward the endless darkness behind the cavern. Much larger than the town above it. Daniel's heart pounded. You're saying? This entire town is sitting on top of it? The creature smiled. Yes. A cold silence filled the cavern. Emily looked at Daniel. That means the house could. She couldn't finish the sentence. But Daniel understood. If it keeps growing, it could swallow the entire town. The creature nodded slowly. That is the plan. Daniel stepped backward. No. The creature's voice became calm again. But the house needs a keeper to continue growing. Emily whispered. Daniel? Daniel shook his head. I'm not doing this. The creature laughed softly. You misunderstand. It leaned closer. You already are. Daniel suddenly felt the whispering voices grow louder than ever before. Not just in his mind. In the walls. In the floor. In the ceiling. Everywhere. The cavern began trembling slightly. Small pieces of stone fell from above. The people trapped in the cavern looked around in panic. What's happening? Someone shouted. The creature looked delighted. The house is waking up. Daniel grabbed Emily's arm. We need to get out. Emily shook her head helplessly. There's no exit. Daniel looked around desperately. There has to be. The creature spoke calmly. There is. Both of them turned. Where? Daniel asked. The creature pointed toward the dark tunnel. The heart of the house. Daniel frowned. What's there? The creature's smile became wider than ever. The thing that has been whispering to you. Emily's voice trembled. You mean the house itself? The creature nodded. Yes. Daniel felt the whisper growing stronger inside his mind. Pulling him. Calling him. Inviting him. Daniel? Emily grabbed his arm tighter. Don't go. But Daniel slowly turned toward the dark tunnel. He could feel it. Something enormous. Something ancient. Waiting in the darkness. And for the first time, the voice spoke clearly. Not just a whisper. But a sentence. Come meet me. The voice echoed inside Daniel's mind again. Come meet me. It was no longer a whisper. It was calm. Patient. Ancient. Daniel stared into the dark tunnel at the far end of the cavern. He could feel it now. Something deep inside that darkness was calling him. Not forcing him. Inviting him. Emily grabbed his arm tightly. Daniel, don't go. Her voice trembled. That's what it wants. Daniel tried to look away from the tunnel. But something inside him kept pulling his attention back. Like gravity. I don't think I have a choice, he said quietly. The creature watched them with quiet amusement. Oh, you always have a choice, it said. Daniel turned toward it. Then tell me something. The creature tilted its head. What? If I go down that tunnel, can I stop the house? For the first time in a long while, The creature paused. It studied Daniel carefully. Then it shrugged. Perhaps. Emily stepped in front of Daniel. No. She shook her head firmly. That's exactly what it wants. Daniel looked at her. What if it's the only way? Emily's eyes filled with fear. You don't understand what that thing is. Daniel glanced toward the dark tunnel again. Then explain. Emily hesitated. I've seen it. Daniel's heart skipped. You've been there? Emily nodded slowly. Once. The creature chuckled softly. Yes, that was a memorable day. Emily ignored it. I followed the tunnel 3 years ago, she said. I thought there had to be an exit. Daniel asked quietly. And what did you find? Emily's voice became softer. A room. Daniel waited. A huge room. Bigger than this cavern. And in the center? She stopped speaking. Daniel felt a chill run through him. What? Emily's eyes looked distant, as if she were remembering a nightmare she never fully woke up from. There was something alive inside the walls. Daniel's stomach twisted. What do you mean? Emily shook her head slowly. The walls were moving. A nervous murmur spread through the cavern as several people nearby overheard her words. Emily continued. The floor was breathing, and there were thousands of whispers. Daniel looked toward the tunnel again. That's the heart of the house. Emily nodded. Yes. The creature spoke again from behind them. The first heart. Daniel frowned. First? The creature smiled. Yes. The house grows new ones as it expands. Emily looked horrified. How many are there? The creature shrugged. I stopped counting about 50 years ago. Daniel felt his chest tighten. So the whole structure is alive. The creature nodded proudly. Very much so. Daniel looked back toward the tunnel. If that thing is the source, then destroying it might stop everything. The creature laughed. You're welcome to try. Emily shook her head desperately. No one can destroy it. Daniel turned. How do you know? Emily whispered. Because I tried. Daniel stared at her. What happened? Emily slowly lifted her sleeve. Daniel's eyes widened. Dark marks covered her arm. Thin black veins spreading across her skin like cracks in glass. What is that? Emily's voice trembled. It touched me. Daniel stepped back slightly. What does it do? Emily answered quietly. It changes you. The creature nodded approvingly. Yes. It begins turning you into part of the house. Daniel's blood ran cold. Emily pulled her sleeve back down. I barely escaped that room. Daniel looked at the tunnel again. Then why am I still hearing it? The creature answered. Because it wants you. Emily grabbed his arm again. You can't go there. Daniel's voice was calm now. I think I have to. Emily's eyes widened. No. Daniel looked around the cavern. At the tired faces. The hopeless expressions. People who had given up trying to escape. If I don't try something, he said quietly, this will never end. The creature smiled. Brave. Daniel looked directly at it. But if I fail, the creature finished the sentence. You become the new keeper. Daniel nodded slowly. Emily shook her head. No, please. Daniel gently moved her hand away from his arm. I have to know what this thing is. Emily's voice broke. You won't come back. Daniel didn't answer. Because he wasn't sure she was wrong. The creature stepped aside and gestured toward the tunnel. After you. Daniel walked slowly toward the darkness. The whispers immediately grew louder. Like thousands of voices waking up at once. The tunnel stretched forward endlessly. Cold stone walls. A floor worn smooth by time. And that voice again. Closer now. Daniel? Behind him, Emily called out one last time. Don't listen to it. But Daniel continued walking. Step by step. Deeper into the darkness. After several minutes, the tunnel began to widen. The air became warmer, and the whispering voices became almost deafening. Finally, Daniel reached the end, and stepped into the room Emily had described. He immediately understood why she had run away. The chamber was enormous, bigger than a cathedral. The walls curved like the inside of a living body. And the floor was moving, slowly, rising and falling, like breathing. Daniel's flashlight shook in his hand as he raised it. And then he saw it. In the center of the chamber. Something massive, something alive, a giant shape embedded in the walls, like a heart made of stone and flesh, slowly pulsing. Every beat sent vibrations through the entire room. Thump, 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 and as Daniel stared at it, the heart suddenly spoke, not in a whisper, but in a deep, ancient voice that filled the entire chamber. Finally, Daniel felt frozen in place. The massive heart pulsed again. "I've been waiting for you." Daniel forced the words out. "What are you?" The heart answered calmly. "I am the house." A deep tremor shook the chamber. "And you?" Another pulse. "Are exactly what I need." The massive heart pulsed in the center of the chamber. Thump, thump, each beat echoed through the walls like distant thunder. Daniel stood frozen, staring at the enormous living structure embedded inside the stone. It was impossible to fully understand what he was looking at. Part of it looked like rock. Part of it looked like flesh. And thin black veins spread across the entire chamber, disappearing into the walls and tunnels of the house above. The voice came again. Deep, ancient, calm. "I am the house." Daniel forced himself to speak. "You're alive?" The heart pulsed again. "I have always been alive." Daniel's flashlight trembled in his hand. "What are you?" The voice seemed to think for a moment. "Before your kind built towns? Before your kind gave names to land? I was here." The walls trembled slightly with the next heartbeat. "I grew slowly." Daniel looked around the chamber again. "By taking people." The heart answered simply. "Yes." Daniel clenched his fists. "You're a parasite." The heart did not sound offended. "All living things must grow." Daniel shook his head. "You're destroying lives." Another pulse. "They enter willingly." Daniel thought about the diary. The missing people. The curiosity that had drawn them here. "You manipulate them." The voice replied calmly. "I invite them." Daniel stepped closer. "And if I destroy you?" The heart's voice became softer. "You cannot." Daniel raised his flashlight toward the massive structure. "Why not?" The heart answered. "Because you are already part of me." Daniel froze. "What?" The walls pulsed again. The black veins along the chamber walls slowly moved. Like living roots. "You heard my voice before you even reached this room." Daniel remembered the whispers. The strange pull. Yes. That was not an accident. Daniel felt cold fear spread through his chest. "What did you do to me?" The voice answered calmly. "I chose you." Daniel shook his head. "No." The heart continued. "The previous keeper has grown weak." Daniel suddenly understood. The creature. The tall figure with the long smile. "You mean the carpenter?" "Yes." Daniel felt the room spin slightly. "And you want me to replace him?" Another pulse. "Yes." Daniel stepped backward. "I'm not doing that." The voice grew quieter. "You already are." Daniel suddenly felt a burning sensation in his arm. He looked down. Dark veins were slowly spreading beneath his skin. Just like the marks Emily had shown him earlier. But these were moving faster. Much faster. Daniel's breathing became uneven. "What are you doing to me?" The heart answered simply. "Connecting you." Daniel grabbed his arm in panic. "No." The chamber trembled again. "Do not resist." Daniel turned toward the tunnel behind him. He could still run. He could still escape. But then he remembered something. Emily. The people trapped in the cavern. If he ran, nothing would change. The house would simply choose someone else. And the nightmare would continue. Daniel slowly looked back at the massive heart. "I have a question." The heart answered. "Yes. If I become the keeper, can I control the house?" The chamber became silent. For a moment, the heart did not answer. Then it spoke. Partially. Daniel felt hope flicker inside his chest. "So I could stop you from taking more people." Another long pause. Then the heart replied. "If that is your wish." Daniel stared at the enormous creature. "You're telling the truth?" The heart pulsed slowly. "I require a keeper. The keeper requires purpose." Daniel took a deep breath. The burning in his arm spread further. The dark veins were now reaching toward his shoulder. The transformation had already begun. He had very little time left to decide. Finally, Daniel spoke. Then I accept. The chamber trembled violently. The heart pulsed louder than ever before. Thump, thump, thump. The black veins along the walls suddenly surged forward. They wrapped around Daniel's arms, his legs, his chest. But instead of pain, Daniel felt something else. Understanding. Thousands of memories flooded into his mind. The house, the tunnels, the rooms above, every wall, every floor, every hidden space. He could feel the entire structure like a second body. And far above, he could feel the world outside. The quiet street, the trees, the empty road. Daniel whispered, "I can feel everything." The heart answered, "You are the keeper now." Far away, in the cavern, Emily suddenly looked up. The ground beneath her feet trembled. "What's happening?" someone asked. Then, a loud cracking sound echoed through the underground cavern. The stone wall where the staircase had disappeared began to open. A doorway. People gasped in shock. Emily's eyes widened. No way. The passage to the attic had returned. People began running toward the stairs. Some crying, some laughing. Emily looked up the staircase. Toward the house above. Toward Daniel. Tears filled her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. Minutes later, the cavern was empty. The trapped people were gone. Free. Only silence remained underground. Deep in the chamber, Daniel stood beside the massive heart. The dark veins on his arm had stopped spreading. They now rested quietly beneath his skin. The heart spoke one last time. "You have changed the rules." Daniel looked toward the ceiling. Toward the world above. "Yes." The heart pulsed slowly. "And if the house hungers again?" Daniel answered calmly. "Then it will hunger." The heart asked, "And if it demands more people?" Daniel's voice was steady. "Then it will wait." A long silence followed. Finally, the heart spoke again. "You are different from the others." Daniel replied quietly, "I know." Far above, the old house on the quiet street stood exactly the same as before. Dark, silent, ordinary. But inside, a new keeper watched the world. And for the first time in 200 years, the house stopped growing. Sometimes monsters are not destroyed. Sometimes, they are simply given a better guardian.